Essa semana foi realizada aqui em São Paulo a coletiva de imprensa com o ator Andy Serkis, mesmo que acabou dando vida ao personagem de Cesar através da captura de movimentos. O ator esteve aqui, falou muito a respeito do seu trabalho nos 3 filmes de Planeta dos Macacos. Eu tive a oportunidade de estar lá registrando essas imagens, onde vocês vão acompanhar na íntegra a coletiva que foi realizada aqui, com várias perguntas de vários veículos de comunicação. Ele mostrou uma simpatia muito grande, ele interagiu com os jornalistas todo o tempo, e é claro que não faltou alguns assuntos referentes à sua carreira também. Claro que ele vai ser para sempre lembrado como o Gollum de Senhor dos Anéis, que foi o personagem que alavancou ele de uma vez por todas para o estrelato. Porém, pessoal, eu gostaria de deixar claro para vocês que as perguntas que vocês vão ver a seguir foram feitas em português pelos jornalistas brasileiros e respondidas em inglês pelo Andy Serkis. Mas se você não domina o idioma inglês, não fique aí apavorado não. Lá no meu outro canal, no Fato Notícias, eu tenho um tutorial que ensina, para quem não conhece ainda, como você colocar as legendas automáticas aqui no YouTube. O vídeo ele não tem nem 3 minutos. Ó, tô linkando aqui, é um tutorial rapidinho e você vai conseguir fazer uso dele também para outros vídeos que você futuramente possa querer assistir YouTube afora. Combinado? Então a seguir, fique aí com a coletiva de imprensa na íntegra com o ator Andy Serkis.
Andy, consegue me ouvir?
Yeah.
Ok. Eu queria primeiro agradecer por você estar aqui hoje com a gente, com meus colegas aqui. Queria começar fazendo uma pergunta. Você transformou o motion capture em um padrão para dar vida a personagens de uma maneira inovadora, visionária e de uma maneira brilhante também. E quando você tem um filme como Planeta dos Macacos, A Guerra, e você tem novos atores para poder fazer esse mesmo trabalho, como Cesar, o que eles pedem para você? Que tipo de orientação eles olham para você e falam, cara, eu nunca fiz isso, como é que funciona?
I think the most important thing that actors realise when they first start to use performance capture technology is that it is only that, it's a technology. It's not a way of acting. You don't perform or act in any differently than if you were playing a live action character on a screen. Obviously, if you're playing an ape, then you have to do a certain amount of research into the behaviour of apes, how they move, how they behave, how they communicate. But of course, these aren't just apes, any apes. These are apes that are anthropomorphized. They're evolved apes. They have all been transformed by this drug that is changing them and making them evolve rapidly. So, for instance, when Steve approached the character, I think he started to do the research and do the basic research and observe apes in zoos and YouTube and all sorts of programs. But then the question becomes, what is the character? Who is the character of Bad Ape, or Cesar, or Maurice, or Rocket, or any of the characters? What is the character? And that is acting. That is making choices about. He chose to play him as a lonely mountain guy who collected things in order so that he didn't feel lonely, and that he'd lived alone for a long time. And so there's a sadness to that character. But this is where the human aspect of bringing these characters to life is so important. It's always comes from the human emotion. After all, the metaphor that we're using of apes is only to reflect the human condition and to be able to look at ourselves in a much deeper and through a different prism.
Ok. Quem é que tem a primeira pergunta? Esse caso de Mas, já vi a plaquinha. Agora está.
Olá, boa tarde, bem-vindo ao Brasil, Andy. Eu sou a Michelle, escrevo para o Garotas Geeks e para o História Brasil. E eu queria perguntar para você, no filme, você fala muito sobre a humanidade dos macacos e como eles estão sendo humanizados através dessa emoção que a gente vê nos olhos deles, na atuação. E no combate que o Cesar tem com o coronel fala: você tem muita emoção, que você devia ter mais razão. E engraçado que tem essa coisa do ser humano ser muito racional e por isso a humanidade, e tem a coisa da emoção também da humanidade. Dentro desse aspecto, o filme tem um comentário político sobre o militar, sobre o outro. Eu queria que você comentasse um pouco sobre isso, sobre humanização e racionalização.
Well, the truth of the matter is that the main theme of this movie, and in fact all of the Apes movies, really are about empathy and the peril of a situation if we live in a world as human beings where we lose the ability to be empathic towards another culture, another society, a different people, a different species, the planet. What happens if we lose that ability to really put ourselves in the position of the other people, the other kind, the other culture? And that is really the approach that all of these films, going back to the 1968 original Planet of the Apes movie, they were always written as social commentary, as well as being grand entertainment. And that is the beauty of this metaphor, is that, and why it's been a privilege to be part of this franchise, because you can operate on a global stage to a wide audience of people in the guise of great entertainment, and yet say something that is incredibly important, meaningful, emotional, and hopefully will connect with an audience in a profound way. And to have that balance is why I think these films have had such a long reign. Now it's 50 years, why they keep coming back and why they are becoming classic stories, because to have allegories that can really speak to the human condition is what we need at the moment in the world. Storytelling is really one of the ways that we can save ourselves. We obviously live in very dangerous, confused, ideologically mixed up times, and as we know, the response to that, the human response to that is to move further and further towards simplistic answers to conflict and to have knee-jerk reactions and find simple ways and emotionally irrational but easy ways to find solutions to the world's problems. And the world is suffering from leadership that is simplistic. And I think what's so beautiful about the metaphor of using apes to see ourselves is that every single character in this movie, whether they're an ape actually or human, are morally, that their moral compass shifts and they change, and they're not black and white. There's no villains and there's no good people completely in these movies. They're full of grey areas. Cesar as a character, who, although he's a noble character, still is flawed. He has killed Cobra, the ape in the previous movie, which goes against everything that he ever believed in. And although he's a leader that's trying to bring about a peaceful solution to the conflict between humans and apes, he still is now filled, once the events that happen at the beginning of the movie affect him, he's filled with a rage and hatred for human beings for the first time in his life. He loses empathy. So this film is very much about how important it is to be empathic. And finally, of course, Cesar is enabled by looking into the eyes of the person he wants to kill to find empathy once more.
Oi, Miguel Barbieri, da Veja São Paulo. Tudo bom? De todos os filmes que você fez em motion capture, qual foi o mais difícil? E desde o Gollum para cá, o que mudou na motion capture? Melhorou? A tecnologia ficou mais avançada? Ficou mais fácil o processo todo? Eu faço um pouquinho de isso.
Sure. So I think what's really important to understand about performance capture technology, as I was saying earlier, I think I was mentioning, it is a technology. It's not a genre or a type of acting. It just isn't. It's an actor becomes that character. What has been amazing about the evolution of the technology, though, is that when I first started working on Lord of the Rings, I was filmed in the movie camera with my fellow actors, Elijah Wood and Sean Astin, playing Frodo and Samwise Gamgee. We played the scenes out on location, on sets, and then I would have to go and repeat the process physically in a motion capture studio with 360 degrees cameras and a suit with markers on, and I would replay Gollum. I could see in real time on a screen Gollum. If I lifted my right hand, I could see Gollum. There was a real time, the information would travel in real time through the computer and onto a screen. So I could learn to be both the marionette and the puppeteer of this digital avatar character. And then you forget all that. Then you start to play it. Once you've learned how to create that, you start to then forget about the objective aesthetic of the character and just concentrate on the internal emotion. So that was what happened at the beginning, back in Lord of the Rings days. And what we didn't have in those days was the ability to capture facial expressions. So when we did Gollum, my performance that was on film was then copied exactly by the animators. They copied every single facial expression. When I was finishing Lord of the Rings, then Peter Jackson asked me to play King Kong. That was for the first time that we used facial capture. And so that was more of a direct drive situation where I had markers on my face, and those markers were assigned to muscles on the digital mask of King Kong, of Kong's face. So if I moved my face around, then Kong would move his face around. But it could only happen inside a studio, and the cameras were like an array of 180 degrees, so you couldn't turn and face the other way. Then when we started to work on Tintin, which was at the same time that Avatar was happening, there was a big move to wear head-mounted cameras so that then you were you were untethered, you could move around in any direction. Then the big movement to be able to film performance capture outside happened with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where we were suddenly able to take everything, all of the cameras, and as well as the movie cameras that were filming us on locations and on sets, we were able to then film performance capture in real time with other actors, which meant that forevermore, there would be no going back and having to repeat the process on a motion capture stage. That it was a direct, the relationship between actors, for instance, the James Franco character in Rise, Will, or John Lithgow, and then the Jason Clarke character in Dawn and so on, and then obviously Woody Harrelson and all the other live action actors, if you like. That connection was then just played once, for real, on set, on location, and therefore the actor there, doesn't have to repeat the process, and it becomes exactly the same as filming any live action character. What has also improved, of course, and which you will have observed in the film that you've seen, is on the back end. The visual effects company Weta are now extremely advanced in the photorealism of the way the apes are rendered. So the texture, the fur, the eyes, the snow on the fur, all these things that would have been very difficult to do, for instance, even as far back as Rise, are now possible, which makes it easier for them to completely honour the actor's performance. So the actor's performance on screen, that is shot with the movie cameras and motion capture cameras, that Matt Reeves, the director, then cuts into the movie and spends months and months and months cutting around our performances before we actually get turned into apes. Then when Weta come on board, they are able to completely honour every single emotion, every single choice that the actor makes. Everything that you see is created and authored by the actor, and the fidelity of the visual effects to that performance is now the best it's ever been. Sorry, it was a very long answer. But there's no easy way of explaining this.
Andy, eu tenho uma pergunta. Eu tenho uma pergunta sobre o Matt Reeves, que como diretor, a gente vê que existe uma evolução entre os dois filmes que ele fez e também uma evolução de escala. O Guerra ele é muito maior em termos de escala em relação aos filmes anteriores. Como você vê falar de diretor fazendo a sua parte como protagonista e também ter sido meio que a pessoa que mantém a moral em alta junto com ele, junto com todo mundo, e o diretor também se preocupar com a parte técnica dele?
Yeah, I mean, I think Matt Reeves is one of the finest directors I've worked with because he is a brilliant actor's director, incredible actor's director, and he was only really ever used to, what really interests Matt is performance, and clearly the films he made before was all about performance. And one of the big fears he had when he came to direct this movie, the first one, Dawn, was that somehow the technology would get in the way of him and the actors. Because when you think about it, in these big budget movies, there's hundreds of people standing around wanting to shoot every day, wanting to get the cameras in position to start shooting, and there's a lot of pressure. But Matt was absolutely crystal clear about not wanting to place a camera anywhere until he had worked out and rehearsed with the actors on set exactly where the drama lay in each single scene. Which is very rare in these big budget movies because the pressure is on. So he all the time, supports, and you can see it in the work. Every single camera move is generated from the perspective of performance and point of view, which is very important to him as a director. What is the point of view of the movie? What is the point of view? And clearly, Cesar's journey in this is the eyes for the audience. You see the world through Cesar's eyes, and therefore the camera is following that and supporting that. He's a brilliant, not only a great director on set with actors, he's incredibly intelligent and has used the technology in such a brilliant way. And is also, of course, as I was describing earlier, the process in post-production means that when the visual effects company Weta present him with a shot that he has been living with, just seeing the actor's face, he'll go, okay, so look, this is what Andy's doing. He's very angry, but he's conflicted, and there's a real vulnerability and sadness as well. What I'm seeing at the moment in Cesar is just the anger, so we need to go back and work on that. So that will go on, that process will keep going on. The iterations will go on to maybe 160 iterations of a single shot to get the emotion exactly matching what it is that the actor has done.
Oi, Andy, eu sou Marcelo, do blog Pop Creature, e eu queria te perguntar o que você acha que o Planeta dos Macacos, essa nova trilogia, esse novo filme tem, que vai levar a galera do cinema e que tem um diferencial de todos os outros filmes de Planeta dos Macacos que a gente já viu aí. E eu também queria te pedir se você poderia fazer a voz do Cesar para a galera que está aí na frente filmando, mandando uma mensagem para os brasileiros ou alguma coisa legal assim. Obrigado.
Okay. So, what I think will appeal to an audience going to see this movie, if they have followed these movies, or even if this is the first one, is, as I was saying earlier, there is a real sense of watching a great story unfold before your eyes, I think, watching these movies. There's nothing predictable about this film. You don't know what is going to happen from one moment to the next. And I have to say, in the current climate of blockbuster films, that is a very rare experience, because we all know that the sort of exhaustion from the sequels is huge, because they offer nothing new often in movies. They tend to play a formula, kind of in the first act what's going to happen at the end. This movie is unlike that, I think. I think it's fair to say. And that is from the great storytelling mind of Matt Reeves, and from the way that he has used his actors to tell this story. I think it's a story that really is a movie for our times in terms of its message. I think it will affect people emotionally. I think it will educate people into seeing other without being judgmental. And I think it's a very powerful piece of cinema. Now, your other question. So, to give some context, when we started working on how Cesar would speak, for instance, in Dawn, or even going back as far as Rise, it was always, when he first started to utter human words, and I don't know if you remember Rise, but in the first movie, the first word that he said is no. And that comes from an ejection of emotion, which is through the mind and physiognomy of an ape. It's very, it needs to have that believability of being urgent and come from a very strong emotional anger at the way that the other apes are being treated by the handler. In the second film, we had to find a way of making believable apes talking believable, and that was a big challenge. Because going from all those beautiful scenes where you see a lot of signing and silence between the apes communicating such a lot, to then introduce speech was always going to be a big challenge. So it was like, how do we make Cesar start to use human language believably? And the process of that was by again, it's a sense of urgency, but they're not constructed sentences like we would construct as human beings. They are put together. It's like Cesar searching for words, searching for ways of putting together and constructing a sentence. And again, so I wore a mouth guard in my mouth to make it less easy for him to form the words as well. It was the birth of a language. So when he was speaking originally, he would speak like this. He would say, "I do not want more." So there was a very slow, deliberate attempt at forming speech. And in this movie, obviously Cesar speaks a lot more, and we had to find a way of articulating Cesar linguistically. That was going to be a quicker, otherwise it would be an incredibly long movie. And so, for instance, the scene at the beginning of the movie, in this he sounds more like he's able to put thoughts together in a much more efficient way, but also emotionally, his emotional intelligence as well is much more evolved into a human state almost. So at the beginning he would say, "I did not start this war. The ape who did is dead. His name was Oba." So you can just hear there's a difference between those two in terms of the articulation.
Ok? Quem é a próxima? Tá aqui.
Olá, boa tarde. Batata Free Pop. A gente sabe que no set tem os dias bons e os dias ruins, então eu queria saber como é que foi a gravação de um dia bom e um dia ruim do Planeta dos Macacos, a Guerra.
Well, I mean, this journey for me was an incredibly intense experience. We were shooting for 5.5 months in a Canadian winter, and the night shoots that we were on, sometimes it dropped down to about -16. And when you're wearing a motion capture suit, it's not funny. And but I think one of the days that was great fun actually was the first day of meeting Bad Ape, because Steve Zahn is such a great actor, but he's also a comedian, and he's also one of those actors who, if you look into his eyes for too long, it's very hard to keep a straight face. And so those were very, very enjoyable days. There's a sort of delicious sort of moment between being deeply in character and then being completely hysterical because something's going on in the eyes of another actor, and so they were great fun days. But for the most part, the rest of the whole shoot for me was quite bleak, and I spent a lot of time either being jerked around by a chain or being hung up on a crucifix or kicked around or beaten up or told my wife and family had died or told that, every day it was, or meeting the colonel who was the man I wanted to hate or killing him. Every single scene of every day of the shoot had such an intensity to it. And was very bleak, and I was in a cage, or it just went on, and it was pretty exhausting. But all of that helped with the character.
Andy, existe uma certa cobrança do público, dos fãs, que as premiações, né, as grandes premiações do cinema comecem a reconhecer atores que fazem performance capture. Qual a sua visão sobre isso? Você acha que já é hora de as premiações de cinema também enxergarem que isso é uma performance como qualquer outra?
Damn right, I really do. I do. I think it's total prejudice and ignorance because people are refusing to understand what the technology is. It is a technology. It's no different in terms of the acting process, you know, to playing any other character. I've said this for years and years and years. And unfortunately, you know, the perception is changing. Young directors, young filmmakers, young actors, they all know the deal. They all know what performance capture is. It's unfortunately the older members of all of the acting bodies, branches, all of the awarding bodies, BAFTA, Golden Globes, Academy, you know, the older members, without being ageist, the older members are refusing to even understand what it is. And all they have to do is watch some behind the scenes footage and they will clearly understand that this is not about, you know, getting into a suit and providing reference for later on where the character is going to be created. The acting happens as in any other creation of a character on screen with the other actors and the director on set. So there is a willful lack of understanding, I think, and I think that will change. We will not be having this discussion in 5 years, I'm convinced. But I hope, you know, I do hope it comes sooner rather than later because it really is a sort of a blindness. If I played Cesar with prosthetic makeup and a furry ape suit, people would go, oh yeah, that's acting. You can see that's a performance, you know. But if I'm wearing a motion capture suit and that digital makeup is put on my face afterwards, they kind of go, you know, they actually I'm doing apes a service. So it's been frustrating. It's been frustrating.
Olá, meu nome é Amanda, sou do Jornal Metro. Eu queria entender como é que foi fazer o Cesar agora mais velho, né? Queria saber se houve alguma mudança na preparação de corpo para esse personagem com mais idade e se você toparia participar de uma sequência do filme como outro personagem.
Thank you for the question. The change of Cesar throughout the movies has included a physical change. So in fact, the most exhausting, I have to say, was playing the young Cesar when I was playing a very agile young orphan chimpanzee who was pretty much all chin. You know, you saw him begin to change and rise as a teenager and begin to be more upright, but still had a lot of energy. And then in the second film, you know, Cesar as a leader and a father. Again, I wanted to give him more weight. He was much more upright. I changed the use of the way that my hands were. So in the first film, I very much had ape-like hands in terms of picking things up. It would be, you know, very much how an ape might pick something up. In the second film, it would be more, you know, slightly more human. And so everything about him changes physically from film to film. And in this last film, I really wanted a sense of Cesar, a leader in time of war, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and I literally wore incredibly heavy weights on my wrists and on my legs. You know, he only walks now. He doesn't really. He does occasionally quadruped, but it's quite rare, and only when he's escaping at speed at the end. But for the most part, he is very human-like in his physicality. And it's not just the sort of straightening up and becoming more upright. It's actually emotionally where he is at, which affects the physicality. Because as we all know, you know, our emotional muscle memory, everything is tied into our body. Everything that we think, everything that we feel, the way that we are, is reflected in our physicality. So I wanted him to have this sense of weariness and tiredness, as well as you know, being much more human-like.
And would you come back and do another character?
Oh yeah. Of course, the great thing about performance capture technology means that is absolutely possible because you can play anything now. I love this world. I love the franchise and the metaphor of apes. I think it's a wonderful way of looking at the human condition, and the stories will continue, I'm sure. So I suppose what it comes down to is if it's, you know, a director who I love, like Matt, if you were to return and direct another one, and a character that I really felt that really spoke to me and that I could do something with that would further the story in an interesting way, then I would love to, yeah.
Okay. Eu sou o Boris do Judão. Você falou aí um pouco da evolução física do Cesar, da voz, do corpo, mas no começo é um animal e termina muito mais humano que muito humano por aí. Como foi o seu processo de evoluir a cabeça dele, os pensamentos dele, a mente?
So in the beginning, I treated him very much as forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I always thought of Cesar as a human in an ape's skin. It's always a sense of him being an outsider. But also, there's something about Cesar, young Cesar, that was like a gifted child. A child because of the enhanced intelligence drive that he was given, you know, through his mother, that he received through his mother. I wanted to think of him in terms of a gifted child, a child that was wise beyond his years. So a child who could maybe play a concerto on a Beethoven concerto when he was 3 or 4 years old, or could do very complicated mathematical equations. You know, those genius children. I kept thinking of him sort of intellectually as someone like that, except in an ape form. And then in the second movie, I very much wanted to see him, you know, to compare him to, or find an example of a leader that I really respected, that I thought was emblematic of the way that Cesar would lead his troop of apes, of all different types of apes, bringing together, galvanizing this very disparate group of apes. And so I thought about leaders that I really respected, and Nelson Mandela was very much the inspiration in Dawn of Cesar as a leader of a movement to free them from bondage, to free them from, you know, to create a society that was a working society, an egalitarian society. And then in this movie, kind of it sort of what became apparent to me was that, you know, in the first 2 movies I've been looking outside for inspiration, but really the emotional situation of Cesar in this movie demanded that I looked internally, really. So in terms of his emotions, the way he thinks, the way he behaves, his response to seeing his family killed, how that would affect me really became. I wanted to bring it closer with each movie to me. And so this film very much represents, I suppose, my own. I mean, you're always, of course, as an actor, putting yourself under the microscope and at some way meeting the character. But I wanted to bring Cesar very, very close to me and to approach him from that point of view, so that I could lead the audience through that with my eyes and be their guide and hopefully be an everyman for the audience.
Oi, Fabiana do Laboratório. Queria que você falasse um pouquinho que esse filme é mais filosofia do que ação, se isso ajudou a você mostrar mais a sua atuação, o seu poder de atuação, mesmo através dessa tecnologia, e onde que você imagina que essa tecnologia vai chegar? Se vai ser além disso, se você já imagina filmes que vão além do que você está fazendo hoje?
I've forgotten the first question. What was the first? I was thinking about the second one and I forgot the first one.
Esse filme tem mais filosofia do que ação, se isso te ajudou a mostrar mais da sua atuação.
I think it is. I think it is both. I think it's. I really do think it's both, and it has to be both because it is. There is a. You know, it is a war film. It is about a war between apes and humans. But of course, with all great war movies, like Bridge on the River Kwai, or you know, any great war movie that you can think of, Paths of Glory, it's about the personal response to war. It's about the individuals that are surviving that war. I mean, it's kind of more of a survival story in a way than a war story, I think it's true to say. But it does have incredible set pieces. It has, battles where you actually do feel the violence. When you see apes getting shot, I know that people have said to me that they find it so hard to watch, to see apes being beaten and shot and killed. And I think that if it were a war film, we're so desensitized now that almost seeing an ape being killed is harder to watch than seeing a human being killed, which says quite a lot about us. So, but I think, but Matt is the sort of filmmaker who, as I was saying earlier, would always want to tell this from a point of view, and in this movie it was always going to be Cesar's journey, a mythic journey, and one that sort of cemented in this final chapter this sort of, because it's also a biblical story. It is a Moses story, and he is leading his people to the promised land. And Matt purposefully and Mark, when they were researching how they were going to write this movie, that was very much in the forefront of their minds. It was a biblical, epic, Western mythic story. And so there were elements of the Western, and the outlaw Josie Wales. They watched a lot of films for reference. Obviously, Apocalypse Now too. But again, all of those films are very point of view driven, and that's what we ended up. So yes, of course, it helped me because I lost the point of view, and so it was great to be seeing the world from Cesar's point of view. In terms of the technology and where it's taking us. We're at a very interesting point with performance capture because it sits beautifully right in the middle of many different, it's very, very transmedia friendly. It's the most incredible actor's tool of the 21st century. You can actually play now as an actor. You can play in a big blockbuster movie, you can act in a video game, you can act in a television series now, you can act, the Imaginarium, which is the company that I've set up, we started to work on television projects. You can also act in a VR context, so creating content in the VR world, which is just in its infancy and about to take off. There's also mixed reality, where you can wear, obviously, mixed reality is glasses where you can see both Avatar and the real world at the same time. And also, earlier this year, my company worked on a stage production of The Tempest with the Royal Shakespeare Company in the UK, where we did for the first time an actor on stage wearing a motion capture suit, playing Ariel in The Tempest, where you can see Avatar flying through the air, you can see him appear and shape-shift into different characters. So I think that it's exceptionally actor-friendly tool in so many arenas, and also from a filmmaking point of view, I think we're going to see in 10, 15, 20 years' time more immersive forms of filmmaking, more we won't just be passively watching cinema screens perhaps, we may be fully immersed, that they're more like video game experiences where you are involved and you're actually in the middle of the story and you're a character in the film. And again, performance capture will play a huge part in that.
Ok. A gente tem tempo para mais uma pergunta.
Oi, Andy, tudo bom? Meu nome é Silvia, site Coisas Impossíveis. Você agora vai ficar por trás das câmeras um tempo, certo? Alguns projetos aí que vem, que estou bem ansiosa. E eu quero saber o que você vai trazer da sua experiência como Cesar, né, como Gollum, por exemplo, para dirigir esses próximos filmes. Como é que vai ser essa experiência aí? Obrigada.
Thank you. So yes, I mean, years ago I wanted to become a director, and was very fortunate when I got to work with this technology, because I very obviously was able to stand on both sides and see visual effects develop, see how animators work with them, seeing how they were bringing performances to life. Peter Jackson has been obviously a huge mentor for me. He asked me to direct the second unit on the Hobbit trilogy, which gave me this incredible experience. But I'd always wanted to direct, going way back, I started to make short films and directed performance capture for video games. And was, when I set up the Imaginarium, which is our studio and production entity, it was always with a view to me directing. In fact, just as we were setting up a project, that's when The Hobbit came along. And these two films that you're talking about now, that I'm one in post-production with and one is coming out, Jungle Book, which is coming out next year, which I'm very excited about. Again, using performance capture technology and using it in a way, you know, if you think it's difficult to take an actor's face and put it onto the physiognomy of an ape, then you should try putting it onto the physiognomy of a snake or a panther or a tiger or a hyena or a wolf. That becomes very interesting, and that's what we've been working on, and we're working with an incredible cast. Christian Bale playing Bagheera the Panther is extraordinary, and to see Christian's face in that panther is quite remarkable. So that film comes out next year. We have a wonderful young actor, Rowan Chan, playing Mowgli, who's extraordinary for his age. He's such an amazing actor. It's very different to the Disney version in the sense that it's closer to the tone of Rudyard Kipling's original book, and it's for a slightly older audience, for a sort of 10-year-olds up audience. And then the other film that is coming out in October at the Toronto Film Festival and then opens the London Film Festival is a movie called Breathe, which is a film which is very close to my heart. It's a personal story of my business partner, Jonathan Cavendish's parents, about the story about Robin and Diana Cavendish. Robin was struck with polio in the 1950s. He was a very athletic young man who went to Africa to start a life with his wife. They fell pregnant with Jonathan, my business partner. And he got struck with polio, and of course in those days, the life expectancy of a polio sufferer was 0, so they expected him to die. He didn't die. His wife convinced him to stay alive to see the birth of their child, and he was given an emergency tracheostomy. And the film is really about pioneering, living. She said to him, "What will be the one thing that will keep you alive?" And he said, "Get me out of hospital," which is basically like saying, "Put me on the moon." It was an impossibility in those days. And she did that. The story is about a pioneer, a person living outside of the hospital system with that level of disability, and in a very life-affirming way, and the people that surrounded him that made their lives, that validated their lives. It's an extraordinary story and a beautiful love story, and it's played by Andrew Garfield and Claire Foy in the central roles, and they're quite remarkable, so I'm very excited about that.
So, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, obrigado.
Thank you.
É isso aí, meus amigos. Eu espero que tenham gostado do vídeo de hoje. No entanto, não se esqueçam de se inscrever no canal, deixar o seu joinha e participar nos comentários. E para receber nossas novidades, acione a campanha de notificações, que está ali, bem ao lado do botão de inscritos. Um grande abraço e até breve!